perfect glass should be stronger than steel. That's not hype. In 1921, A. Griffith ran the numbers and showed that a flawless strand of glass could withstand stresses thousands of times higher than what ordinary glass survives. And yet your phone screen loses to your keys. We treat glass like it's delicate. Metal bends, glass shatters. End of story. Except glass isn't weak, it's sabotaged. At the atomic level, glass is a tight network of silicon and oxygen bonds. Those bonds are strong. If every bond shared the load evenly, glass would be terrifyingly tough. But real glass isn't perfect. Under a microscope, the surface is covered in tiny scratches, not dramatic cracks, microscopic flaws. You can't see them, you don't feel them, they're just there. And each one is a stress amplifier. When you pull on a material, the force should spread out. But at the sharp tip of a crack, the stress spikes. The sharper the crack, the worse the spike. The math for this is called the stress intensity factor. Translation: a tiny surface flaw can multiply the local stress by hundreds or even thousands of times. So the sheet of glass might be under mild tension. The crack tip is under microscopic doom. Griffith's key insight was about energy. A crack will grow if the elastic energy released by extending it is greater than the energy needed to create two new surfaces. Once that balance flips, the crack doesn't creep. It runs. Fast. Close to the speed of sound inside the glass. That's why glass doesn't slowly bend like metal. Metal has dislocations, defects in its crystal structure that let atoms slide past each other. Stress can spread. The material can deform. It has an escape route. Glass doesn't. It's amorphous. Disordered, no easy slip systems. The atoms are locked in a rigid network. So stress builds elastically, quietly, invisibly, until one crack wins. And then everything releases at once. This is why polishing glass makes it stronger.
Remove the scratches, remove the stress concentrators. In the 20th century, carefully drawn glass fibers, handled to avoid surface damage, were shown to approach their theoretical strength. Same chemistry, fewer flaws, massive difference. Now the part that feels backwards. Engineers don't try to make glass flawless, they squeeze it. Tempered glass is heated and then rapidly cooled on the surface. The outside solidifies first and contracts, locking the surface into permanent compression while the interior sits in tension. Cracks hate compression. To open, they first have to fight that built-in squeeze. That's why tempered glass is several times stronger than ordinary annealed glass. And when it finally fails, it doesn't form long, lethal shards. The stored elastic energy releases and the internal stress pattern forces it to crumble into small chunks. This isn't a modern trick. In the 1600s, Prince Rupert's drop showed the same physics. Drip molten glass into water and the outer layer cools instantly, going into extreme compression. You can hammer the thick end and it survives, but snap the thin tail and the whole drop explodes into powder. High-speed photography later showed the fracture racing through it at kilometers per second. Glass isn't fragile, it's preloaded with energy and waiting for a flaw to cash it out. Even skyscraper windows work this way. Laminated and tempered panels survive hurricane winds not because glass suddenly became tough, but because engineers decide where the stress lives. So when you see a tiny crack in a windshield, you're not looking at random damage. You're looking at a stress amplifier, a microscopic lever, and once the math tips in its favor, that fragile sheet of glass will release all its stored strength in a fraction of a second. Perfect glass is stronger than steel. Your glass just has a scratch.